Good morning to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here. Hurricane Outlook and Discussion Time. I'm putting this together at 9:05 a.m. Eastern Time on Thursday, August 20th. And today is traditionally the official start of the meat of the hurricane season. Dr. Bill Gray, you might have seen Phil Klotzbach from time to time talk about this, that from here on out, this is really the heart of the hurricane season. And right on cue, we have several areas to talk about. This will probably be I know it's the first of, I think I'm going to do several videos today, put it that way. This will be the first of maybe 3, who knows, maybe 4. And I'll try to make them as brief as possible, but with 2 systems that are of interest right now, and then a third right off the coast of Africa. It's going to be hard to make these short. So I guess let's just get on with it, shall we? I'm going to start off with this, the vorticity signature. This really helps me to understand the health of our systems. How are they doing? Kind of like an X-ray, although this is not an X-ray, okay? But that's just my analogy. You can come into the doctor, you say, hey, this is what's going on, whatever. They take an X-ray or they take a CT, whatever the case is, and they can see through you and see what's going on the inside, right? The outside might look fine, or maybe it doesn't, and they want to learn more. Well, this is the same kind of deal. We can look at cloud shots where you have satellite imagery of clouds. This is also a satellite image, but it shows something different. It shows us the amount of spin and energy in the atmosphere, what we call vorticity. That is TD13. That is Invest Area 97L. And this is Genevieve over here in the Pacific. Now, when was this? This was last night. So I'm going to leave those circled. That was last night. Let's see how things progressed between then and now. Obviously, everything's moved forward just a little bit. But you notice, for example, TD13, well, we have an L with it now. But there's marked increase there in the overall vorticity signature. 97 is about the same, maybe a little bit better organized. And of course, Genevieve out there just passing by the Baja, and it'll continue to do so without too much more in the way of impact over the next couple of days, gradually moving into colder water. All right, so that's the vorticity signature. That gives us an idea of how things look from the vorticity standpoint. Now let's look at it from the satellite standpoint. So there's TD13, good envelope of moisture and overall energy. This is 97L. It's really trying to perk up. This could be well on its way to becoming a tropical depression, maybe later today. We have some strong upper level winds here, but I think this is going to change, especially as Genevieve gets out of the pattern in the Pacific, and the overall pattern over the western Atlantic begins to flip to one that's more favorable, as this very pronounced Madden-Julian oscillation, just a very fancy way in meteorological terms of kind of an umbrella of favorability moving into the Atlantic basin. We're going to see a reduction in wind shear, more moist environment overall, and just general favorable conditions. It's called an oscillation because it comes and it goes. You have the enhancing effect of it and then the suppressed effect, and the enhancing portion is moving through the Atlantic now. And lots of talk about that from people like Dr. Michael Ventris, Eric Webb. These are different people that I follow on Twitter. We're not going to get into the details of that today, but just as interesting as things look now, we're not even in the most favorable part yet, put it that way. And I think that's going to play into what's going to happen with our systems, all right? Because things are just going to get more favorable from here. So, again, here's TD number 13. All right, this is the area off of Africa that we will watch. You never know where that ends up. That's 97L. So let's take a look at these on the close-ups, as it were. And this is really neat. I really like this. This is from the weathernerds.org site. The visible satellite animation, overnight hours, all that yellow speckle in there, that is lightning. And you can see there was some lightning in the vicinity of Jamaica, over Jamaica. So for those of you that are watching from Jamaica, you had some lightning in the overnight hours and some accompanying thunder. And even over here near the Caymans, some of these far outer fringes of the envelope of energy here associated with 97, definitely making it over to the Caymans. Nothing substantial or really problematic. But let me do something here after this loop finishes and it starts over the first frame. Let's go back. Doot, 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 doot. All right. So watch what happens here. Notice, even in the lightning, you can just see the lightning rotating, right? That's fascinating. You can watch the lightning counterclockwise rotation. That tells me that this has a vigorous turn to it. It's trying. It's definitely trying. And as the conditions get more favorable, I believe this is going to go. And there's a couple of other clues that you can see. The winds are starting to fan out this way. The upper level outflow is improving. It's got a little bit of that curvature to it overall. It's almost like I've designed some kind of art there. But nature does that, right? Nature sort of leads the way. And this is moving over very warm water temperatures. Those will only increase the upper ocean heat content. And yes, we need to watch this closely. We're going to focus on this more as time progresses, but it is time to also focus on 98, which is out here. But before I do so, this does have my attention. I'm not going to be ignoring this, but for the time being, because 98L, I think, is going to be closer to the islands, and this is over the Caribbean at the time being, we're going to worry about this later in the day. So we're going to take things again in different chunks and different views as I do these videos throughout the day. But I just wanted you to know I'm on this, and I do believe it's going to possibly pose a problem, maybe even for the Gulf Coast states, and we're going to address that in my afternoon update. All right, so that's a preliminary look at 97. I said 98, it's actually TD13, and out here, still in the open tropical Atlantic, same kind of deal. Visible satellite animation from nightfall to daytime, and clearly you can see the rotation right in there. Very large envelope of energy. Still some dry air around it that's trying to get entrained, but you see this burst of convection here. There's really not much shear, maybe a little bit of southerly shear. So it's not in a perfect environment, and it's taking its sweet time to develop. And that might be a reason why the models are, especially the global models, aren't doing much with it. And we're going to look at that in more detail in just a moment. So kind of going back a little bit to 97, again, it's located down here. Let's use blue. 97L located right down in this vicinity, moving towards warmer and warmer upper ocean heat content values. The Northwest Caribbean, the Western Caribbean as a whole, very conducive for development, sea surface temperature wise, upper ocean heat content wise, and wherever this ends up, somewhere in this zone, I guess, the water temperatures too, very, very warm. These are the upper ocean heat content values, and just real quick, in case this is the first time you've ever seen me, what this shows, these are not sea surface temperatures. This is what we call the tropical cyclone heat potential map. And so the brighter these colors are, in other words, the scale over here, when you're in the upper part of the scale, anything that's not blue, if it's lighter shade of blue on up to these rainbow colors, that just indicates higher values of upper ocean heat content, meaning that the water is warm maybe 100 to 200 meters deep before you start to cool it off. It's not just at the surface. So this is a very important guide in terms of how much energy is available in the ocean. And this is the wide shot of most of the North Atlantic. This is the Gulf of Mexico. Here we have the Caribbean, or the Caribbean, whichever way you want to call it. And look at these little bullseyes right here, literally off the chart, upper ocean heat content values. And 97 is going to be taking advantage of that. More than likely this will become a depression, and we got to deal with it later on. And if it gets into the Gulf, after crossing over the Yucatan here, does it come up towards the central Gulf Coast? Is it more towards Texas? Does it go on into Mexico? I don't know. I think the stronger it is, the more tendency it's going to be for this to turn more north into this west central Gulf. That's one clue the stronger it is, I think the more north it goes. So we're going to definitely pay attention to this more, and I will do so in the afternoon update, which is forthcoming. All right, so in regards to TD13, very important part of the discussion here from Dr. Jack Bevan. I've known him for more than 20 years, and this really explains it right here. He says overall the environment, when we just look out there, it looks generally favorable for strengthening, with the cyclone expected to enter light to moderate shear. However, the guidance responds to this environment with a wide range of solutions. You guys have probably seen all of this. You smart people out there, you know how to look these up. The H-Wharf and the H-Mon, which, by the way, those are two hurricane, or more appropriately, tropical cyclone specific models. They were designed, they're not global models. They are designed to forecast track and intensity for existing tropical entities and even in invest areas, but especially once you get a well-defined circulation. And I'm going to show you, H-Wharf is Hurricane Weather Research Forecast Model. Wait till I show you what HMON stands for. So anyway, Dr. Bevan goes on to say that the guidance responds to a wide range of solutions, with the H-Wharf and HMON forecasting it to become a major hurricane. And then the others, the GFS and the Euro, degenerating the system into an open wave by 5 days. And the other two models, the UK Met and the Canadian model, also known as the CMC, has had some upgrades lately, and it seems to be doing pretty well recently. A lot of times it seems to want to suffer from what we call convective feedback, where it'll latch onto some thunderstorms and it just kind of goes crazy with it, like a child on sugar, or an adult on sugar for that matter. And it's been tempered a little bit, it looks like. And so that might be something to consider here, that the Canadian is more reliable for the most part than it has been. And all of these models are built on math and physics and other things that are far beyond my pay grade. So just keep that in mind. And so the hurricane-specific models are indicating, the H-Wharf, the HMON, that TD13 becomes a major hurricane. The weak GFS solution appears to be due to forecast dry air entrainment, which is a possibility, as the satellite imagery does suggest Saharan dust not far from the cyclone. And so he says, between all these factors and the possibility of land interaction, the low confidence intensity forecast has changed little from the initial advisory from last night. So good discussion there, as always, from Dr. Bevan. So now let's look at the H-Wharf. This is from the 0Z run. I typically like to look at the major synoptic runs, 0Z, 12Z. You have the off runs of 6 and 18. Many people have said there's really not much difference. I just know that the 0 and the 12Z have the weather balloon data. Sometimes there's extra data in those off runs. But the major synoptic runs are 0Z and 12Z. So we're going to look at the 0Z from last night. And what we're looking at here is the infrared simulated temperature, kind of like looking at clouds from the model. So it's kind of a satellite picture that the model is generating in its own world from numerical weather prediction. Does that make sense? And so this is last night, valid, this is when it was started, 0Z last night. That's 8 p.m. Eastern time, valid roughly right now. Right now it's about 13:19 Z, right? Because it's 9:19 a.m. Eastern. And so this is right about now, put it that way. So this is what the H-Wharf thinks, if you will, the satellite presentation would look like right about now. Not bad overall. This is a visible satellite image. It's not infrared, but that's the cluster. This is what the H-Wharf thought it would look like. Well, not bad. You got to admit, that's pretty close. All right, so just keep that in mind. The initial is a big deal. How it interprets things from the get-go, and then you go from there. And even though that's not the initial, that's 12 hours out, if you move it from last night to now, this is what it was forecasting, and as I showed you, that's pretty close to the mark. Okay? So that's going out in time. We're out at 24 hours, disheveled, probably some dry air, etc. Not much going on. It approaches the islands, gets more organized, pretty close to and through the Northeast Caribbean. So that would be problematic. Close to Puerto Rico with some serious interaction. The core of it, if you will, the center, probably right in here. And the model doing a good job trying to depict what this would look like if it was, clouds, I guess, is one way to think of it. Interacting there with Hispaniola, maybe even a landfall, sure, kind of close there. Then it starts to gain some latitude. It's getting into that very warm water of the Florida Straits, very similar to Irma's track in some regards. And then by hour 120 and 126, major hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. So this is why, obviously we need to pay very, very close attention to this. This is one of the models. This is the H-WRF. Now what about the H-MON? You guys ready for this? The H-MON, which stands for the Hurricanes and Multiscale Ocean Coupled Non-Hydrostatic Model, is a new hurricane forecast system running operationally at NCEP. That's the National Centers for Environmental Prediction. This version, the H-MON version 3, is an upgraded version based on 2019 operational H-MON version 2.1.3. And this is important. It has shown significant skill improvements in terms of storm track and intensity forecast in northern Atlantic, eastern Pacific, and central Pacific basins. All right? So that right there is key. It has shown significant skill improvements. All right? So keep that in mind, because here's the H-MON as if it was a radar shot. This is sort of like radar composite reflectivity, also from 0Z last night. Okay? So this is the H-MON. Significant improvements is what it says. So let's move this out. 24 hours, not much there. And this falls into place of what the globals are showing. There's not much from them. But by the time we get to 48 hours, the H-MON begins to take shape with this system. It's moving through the islands. For example, let's just scroll this down a little bit, give you an idea of what's what and where's where. I do believe that's St. Bart's, Anguilla, etc. up here. I cannot remember. Very, very frustrating that I can't remember the name of the island, and because Irma went right over it. I got most of them. I believe this long one's Anguilla, and then you got the Virgin Islands over here, U.S. and British Virgin Islands. All right, so that's the Northeast Caribbean. We'll just call it that. Mr. Geography can't remember everything, so just keep that in mind. That's where we are in terms of land masses. All right, so we go out in time, and now we're out to 66, 69, 72 hours, 994 on the pressure. It's moving north of Cuba here, north of Cuba, and really starting to intensify as it gets into the Bahamas, and it really just goes from there. You see this, south of Andros, right over the southern part of Andros, 953 millibars, formidable hurricane. And then at 114 hours, Monday afternoon, landfalling near Key Largo as a powerful hurricane. See that? 949 millibars, probably 947 there, and maybe even more intense than that. So this definitely has my attention because of exactly what it says right here. Okay? Da-da-da-da-da, significant skill. You can't look at this and go, it's the H-MON, it sucks. Well, no, it doesn't, apparently, according to the website about it. So that's very interesting. Now, let me show you this, and then we'll call it not call it a day, because we still have more of these to do. I'm going to give you a little bit of insight on what my colleagues and I talk about. If we could ever broadcast that, where you watch us talk. Greg Nordstrom and myself, he's a Mississippi State University meteorologist as an instructor there. Brent and I will talk about this stuff over text. Some of our Tony Bright, my colleague, he's a meteorologist here in Wilmington. We get together, in our little hen clubs, as we call it, and we discuss things, and we throw out all. It's the idea of getting a consensus on something. So instead of just me looking at it, we talk amongst ourselves, try to get rid of any biases, because we do get excited about tracking these systems. That doesn't mean we want them to happen, but when they do happen, we want to make sure we do our best. And so we try to get through all the noise, if you will. What do we look at? So Greg taught me sort of this notion last night. We were looking at this together. This is the 0Z run last night of the Euro, the ECMWF. Forget about the fact that the Euro does not develop this, that there's no system really discernible in the Euro through here when I'm showing you what I'm about to show you. Let's look at the pattern instead of the details of the cyclone. And again, credit to Greg Nordstrom for kind of leading me down this path to understand this. So that being said, what are we looking at? So again, this is the ensemble prediction system from the European. All of the members of the Euro put together. This is the EPS, what we call the ensemble prediction system. General anomalous, that's the blue, troughing over the Mississippi Valley here. You can see that. And then pretty much average, ridging, 591 height line here. That's your Bermuda High, sitting out over the western Atlantic. And then somewhere in here, this is hour 24, somewhere in here, it doesn't show up because the Euro doesn't develop it, would be TD13. You understand? So now let's move this out to 48 hours. The ridge out here is getting larger. Watch this right here. But still, it's not showing up in as much of an anomaly at all. The anomalies will start to show up in these meters here, 6 meters thicker, etc. And that's how the atmosphere is measured and with height. And we're getting into some meteorology here, but just watch what happens. Follow me here. So that's 48. At 72, oh, there you go. This is what stood out with Greg. And he called this, his own little terminology, the bubble ridge. That this bubbles up, it fattens. It's like the ridge is going, so it's inflating. And you got to figure at 72 hours let's look at the H-Wharf. Let's go to 72 hours on the H-Wharf. The H-Wharf has the system basically to the north of the Dominican Republic. All right, so we do know where that is. The H-Wharf would have the cyclone right about there. Do you understand? You may understand. That's enormous. It's due south of an expanding 500 millibar ridge building over the top to the north of it, moving generally west to west-northwest. Hurricane Andrew did that in 1992, and look what happened. Other hurricanes have gotten underneath those ridges. Irma, farther out in the Atlantic, got underneath a strong ridge to the point where it dipped it south. When you see these systems south of these ridges like that, it's the pattern that you need to look for. And we know all the other constants in here. Water temperatures all through here, ridiculously warm. So that's not a limiting factor. So it's not like this is sitting in the face of strong shear in an El Nino year with colder and the setup is there. What we call the synoptic setup seems to be there that this should strengthen. That's 72 hours at 96. Unbelievable. It strengthens even more. This shading is here is anomalies, right? So we're sitting here 6, and this is 12, so somewhere between 6 and 12, 10 maybe, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to know what the intervals are. But the ridge is anomalously strong, which means actually it's going to be a pretty toasty, muggy weekend for the southeast. At 96 hours on the H-Wharf, where is the cyclone? Just to give us an idea, it's just north of the eastern part of Cuba. So the cyclone would be sitting right in there. And you can almost see it there, a little perturbation in the height line of the Euro. It's on the southwest side of this ridge. Wow. Okay, the synoptic setup, then we go to day 5 here, is right where it needs to be. Interesting that at day 5, it's sitting over there you can just tell that's where it would be. The height line here is slightly perturbed. That's the cyclone at day 5 on the H-Wharf. Go out to 120. Darn close. The H-Wharf showing generally where it would be off the Keys there, dry Tortugas. We go look at the Euro and the little kink in the height line there, right off the dry Tortugas. Bingo! The synoptic setup suggests that we really need to take this seriously. Because one of two things are going to happen, in my opinion. Either the globals are correct, the GFS and the Euro. Let's just look at them. And they scored a major victory here. Not much is going to happen with 98. And that's the eventual outcome. Not much is going to happen. It degenerates, and it's all just a bunch of hooey. Or the models, for whatever reason, are not resolving this system, and the hurricane-specific models are going to nail it, and we're going to have a hurricane problem for the Bahamas and then Florida, possibly within the next 5 days. 5 days, 120 hours from now, maybe less in terms of Florida. That's not a lot of time. That's concerning on a lot of levels. So let's look at it another way, shall we? Real quick before I roll it up. 96 hours out, the European, let's just look at the operational real quick. European operational at, let's go to the, there we go. So at 96 hours, the European shows diddly squat right there. Okay? So in 96 hours, either the Euro busts tremendously on this, kind of. I mean, it's not an intensity model. That's the thing. We gotta, even I have to remember that. But it does not depict much at all of a tropical cyclone, whereas at 96 hours, the H-Wharf depicts one heck of a tropical cyclone. I think we could all agree. Even in, as it's close to Cuba there, kind of disheveled, that's a lot different than what we're seeing there. I think we can definitely agree on that. All right, so what should you be doing? We'll end with that. If you're in the Northeast Caribbean, I would say, like I said yesterday and last night, think of your plan that a hurricane is coming. And if it doesn't come, don't get angry with me. Be grateful. So plan for a Cat 1 hurricane, and you should be good to go. You understand that phrase I say, luck favors the prepared? Seriously, that's not hype. That's not, going over the top. Plan for a Category 1 hurricane. Plan for that. And if it's anything less, you win. And if it comes in as a Cat 1 hurricane, you probably win. It doesn't mean you're not going to have damage, but at least you're not like, where did this come from? If you're in the Bahamas or Florida, I would start thinking about preparations for a potential hurricane. That doesn't mean get worried. I know that's easy for me to say. It doesn't mean freak out, run to the store, and start yelling and screaming fire, so to speak. We're not there yet, but we're starting to lean in that direction that trouble could be brewing. And if you're in Florida, in the Bahamas, just take some precautions now, some extra steps if you haven't done them already. Get that extra gas, 5 or 10 gallons, get it done now. Make sure those prescription medications are good to go with the dadgum virus, as I call it. Dealing with that, figure out what you're going to do with that. You don't feel comfortable around a lot of other people? Hey, I get you. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? You feel safe in your home? Be ready to just stay there. Just think about these things now. Don't start sweating bullets and popping the Xanax because it's not time yet. I would never encourage that anyway. Point is, we got to see what's going on. Unfortunately, we're only going to have a few days to react, and the situation could unfold very quickly. And we have to deal with 97, Invest Area 97. Oh, joy. And I have to think about that. How am I going to be in two places at once? Wow. So, clearly, my plate is full, and it's only going to get fuller from here. It's just going to get piled on from the buffet of hurricane season 2020. There you go. I just made that up on the spot. I'll be back this afternoon. We'll look at the 12Z guidance when it comes out. So late this afternoon, probably 3 or 4 o'clock, put on another update, and we shall see what we shall see. Remember, I'm on Twitter at HurricaneTrack. Please follow there. Not begging you to follow, but if you want to, go right ahead. I post from time to time when things are brewing. But once we get out in the field, that's when I really use Twitter a lot. YouTube is where these videos go. Mostly, I also post them on Facebook. The brand, of course, is HurricaneTrack. And then we are supported by Patreon, crowd-funded hurricane coverage like you've never seen before. Check it out. The link to signing up on Patreon to take advantage of all that we offer is in the description of today's video. All right. Also this afternoon, I'm going to show you briefly, but I'm very proud of it, a graphic that Brent, our Patreon supporter from the Virgin Islands, who helps us out, I do want to show you something he put together for Isaias, which will kind of go hand in hand with what we might be doing in the field with these new systems, maybe Laura and Marco, right? So a lot to talk about this afternoon for sure. All right, everybody have a good rest of your morning. Try to take a deep breath and step away from it for a few hours if you can. And we will get back together this afternoon and see what's up. As always, thanks for tuning in. I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll see you again in a few hours.